Rivas, and today I will be presenting my Thinking Geographically folder for AP Human Geography. The main focus of this unit is thinking geographically, as the title says, and how we learn to think as geographers ourselves. So here we have a picture representing thinking geographically. This unit was mainly about what tools geographers use, how we use them, and how they will relate to one another in later units, and how they will be important in later units, like absolute location, the scales of analysis, spatial concepts, and distance decay. Inside of my folder, we have different pictures to help us remember the big ideas of this unit. For example, maps and patterns go hand in hand, because without the patterns, we would not be able to read a dot map. So say we were looking at a dot map of El Paso, of the population of El Paso, we could learn from our patterns which areas are more densely populated than others. Topography maps, we can see the elevation of the mountains or even buildings. Choropleth maps is meant to represent different shades of different ideas. So, for example, the way I like to remember it is choropleth sounds like chloroplast, which means plants get their color from chloroplast, which is a colored map. Then we also have navigation systems and sensing, which we use and geographers use in our everyday life, because without GPS we couldn't go anywhere, which relates to remote sensing, which then gets inputted into GIS, which is layers that we can see. Two main things that we will be focusing on in other units too is location. So absolute location and relative location. Absolute location is where something is. It gives you coordinates and the exact place it is. So for example, an exact location would be the coordinates of El Paso. Relative location is in something in relation to another place. Like your relative, you're related to them in one way or another. So for my example, I drew the restaurant is next to the baseball field, which is relative. The restaurant is relative to the baseball field. Another thing we'll be focusing on, and which is going to help us learn how humans interact with their environment, is theories. We have two main theories: environmental determinism and possibilism. Environmental determinism is a theory where we see that people believe that the environment has an impact on the way people make their cultures, their civilizations, their buildings because of the environment. It all has to do with the environment. So that's why we have a little picture here with a mountain telling the human to build a house. Impossibilism is a theory that humans make their own choices based on where they're at and what resources they have access to. Here we have the scales of analysis, which we will be looking at different levels. So say you're looking at the population or the amount of another thing at a local scale, it will not relate to a national scale, because there are two completely different scales. Because local is much smaller than national, so it will not be the same. Globalization, we're going to be learning how ideas, politics, and money spread around the world, coming from a hearth. So like pasta, it came from Italy. Italy is the hearth of pasta. So it's spread through globalization. Then we also here have space, place, distance decay, and time-space compression. All of these things, space is the amount of distance between two objects. I have one ball at one side of the room and another ball at the other side of the room. That's space. Here we have place. El Paso is a place because it has human and physical characteristics. Here we have a drawing that showcases human characteristics, physical characteristics, a toponym, and then here we have another place where we learned how to use our terminology correctly so that we understand how to read our textbooks and how to better understand what geographers are trying to tell us about the human-environment interaction. Overall, This unit was about learning and thinking like geographers. We learned how they use their tools and how we could use them in our own daily life. We also learned how everything we learned in Unit 1 can be applied to in real life. So that because this stuff can be applied in your real life. Absolute location, GPS are things that we use every single day. That way, we can see how all of this relates to thinking geography and how it will be used in other units.